My name is Kevin Gabbard. I'm on the Chief Data and Analytics Officer's research team at Gartner. The presentation, the top 10 trends in data and analytics, is an annual project that we run. And we're really looking at what are the 10 highest impact but also most urgent things that we want our clients, our Chief Data and Analytics Officer clients, to be looking at, that we really believe will be shaping the landscape for data and analytics over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And importantly, in the way that we position this, the reason this is an annual project, we see that in the development of data and analytics strategy, often what is overlooked, partly because it isn't yet immediately on everyone's radar, is long-term. What are the drivers? Why are we focusing on the initiatives that we're driving with data and analytics? And so the Trends Project is a reminder, not just for what's emerging, because the trends themselves are very, very important, but also that this is a process by which we can look at what are we doing as a data and analytics organization, what are we doing for our enterprise, and putting that in some context so that we have long-term direction for where are we going, why are we doing this, what are we here for. So instead of looking at the 10 trends, which we can go through, and I will list in a second, it's important to put some framing context around it. So one of the things that we have noticed in doing this annually is that getting the long list, enumerating trends, that's sort of the easy part. Figuring out what's the convergence or where it's going, that's a little bit more challenging. And so broadly speaking, what's converging right now, what's trending right now for data and analytics is, how does a data and analytics function deliver value for the organization? And so when we looked at it from that perspective, when we took that lens on the long list of trends that myself and literally dozens of other Gartner analysts looked at and proposed for trends this year, we found that within that value, within that lens of enterprise value, there are actually 3 major themes to stick with. First, how does data and analytics work like a business? How do we think like a business? Second, how do we move from a platforms or even a systems view to that of an ecosystem? While that's more technical, it's also an operational consideration. If we are seeing data and analytics become an indispensable business function, what are sustainable technical operations that are necessary to do that well? And critically, and unfortunately often overlooked, but absolutely indispensable going forward, is don't forget the humans. Humans are an absolutely critical part of delivering value at any organization, and it is often a part of data and analytics where we feel like the human resource aspect of any value delivery is perhaps being set aside or even sort of corrected for with technology or replaced by technology. And so that third trend is really a reflection of where do we see that humans are critically important in the loop, and with technology on the team, a new part of the organization, if we're going to use these data and analytics tools, how do we deliver big value together with the data and analytics and with our critical human resources? So one of the reasons why we think we don't see drivers and trends included in strategy is that there seems to be a gap between listing a trend, something that's happening in the long term or out on the horizon of what we're paying attention to, and execution. And so one of the reasons behind that is that trends don't behave linearly. We tend to think about the future as now with some additional technology or with a little sprinkling of some futuristic elements. And we've been thinking about flying cars as long as probably we've had cars, and it isn't an element. When we think about the future, it is not simply a matter of changing one thing or another. That's convenient for narrative, but it isn't actually how technology develops. It develops incredibly unevenly. One really good way to think about this, and relevant for today's conversations about ChatGPT, is that we had the outlines of an artificial intelligence and its potential capabilities 70 years ago when we were talking about information systems. 7 years ago, we started to see enterprise capabilities be built around AI and start to be a core focus of some set of data and analytics capabilities. And then in the last 7 months, these generative AI conversations have really exploded. And so the question is, why now? We've had the theoretical concepts for 70 years. What has accelerated in the last 7 years, 7 months. And it's that there's a convergence of things external to the trend that have made it possible. So we've had large-scale adoption of cloud. We've seen large data sets with internet training data put together. And so it's the convergence of these trend external factors that really provide a catalyst for these to take a life of their own. And so it's a reminder, and there's a quote from Roy Amara that we tend to overestimate the impact of a trend in the short term and generally underestimate it in the long term. And that's somewhat of a paradox, but it reflects what we see very commonly, that the consideration of a trend doesn't appropriately account for the fact that trend adoption is lumpy, and our goal as leaders is to track these things in the evolution over time so that we can build readiness when we reach some thresholding event and some new technology takes off, say in this case generative AI. So if you think about delivering to requirements that might have been like a systems or a platform view, the long range is, if we're going to be accountable for data and analytics operations, we need to, with humility, understand that our business requirements are going to change, our business pressures are going to change, what our business values for us to deliver is going to change. And so one of the views long term that we can take is looking at how are we going to enable that evolution over time. We know that change is going to happen, and so we don't want to have to keep reinventing the wheel over and over and over as our requirements change. And so it's taking a long view on the architecture to say, where can we design flexibility in and modularity in from the beginning? How do we do that by paying attention to our technical requirements, and how do we think about the ability to evolve long term? So one of the things that we see is that as data and analytics is distributed across enterprises, we have a responsibility to build technology that is accessible by a wide range of stakeholders, a wide range of different user maturities. And so we've seen things like data sharing become really important, and our ability to observe data use across the enterprise and then be able to bring that back to our design requirements, our architecture style, things like practical data fabric. So one of the things that we need to look at it's a real challenge for data analytics functions is that we are often building technology that is in use by a wide set of stakeholders. They have different requirements, they have different levels of maturity, and so when we build an ecosystem around our data and analytics, it requires that we take into account all of those different use cases, and that we are prepared to gather those requirements and build with an understanding that they're going to change over time. All right, so it is really easy as a data and analytics leader, as a CDAO, it's very easy as a CDAO to really be a champion for data and analytics. We want to promote all that is possible with it, but one of the things we have to recognize is that a core tenet of value is always going to be the human in the loop. And so one of the things that we recommend and we should guard against is the idea that there's a fundamental trade-off or a competition between the human element of a solution and a technical element of a solution. And so it is really important for CDAOs to be a champion of human resources when we're talking about these kinds of data and analytics solutions. It's easy for others to get carried away, and oftentimes when we hear things like this new technology is going to replace or supplant some of our human resources, I think that data and analytics leaders need to be aware of how misguided some of that thinking may be. And it changes a little bit where a data and analytics leader needs to step into that equation. They need to think about not where do humans come out, but rather where's the highest leverage touch point where humans need to be in. So humans are always going to be in the loop. This is a question not of replacement and automation, because there's never going to be a full automation, but rather if the solutions that we're delivering are augmented human intelligence, augmented decision making, we have to take on this role of sort of decision engineering. What are the decision flows that are critical for delivery of business value? And what's the right job for the technology? Ultimately, it's a tool. And what's the right job for the human to play in that equation? So there's this concept more of X paradox. And what that paradox says is that humans are inherently good at some things that are quite difficult for machines, technology to take care of. And on the other hand, certain kinds of computation tasks are very challenging for humans, but comparatively easy for computers. And so it is a recognition that we have comparative strengths as humans, and machines have comparative strengths as machines. Is it a computation, or is it a judgment and discretion call? And there's only so much you can do with one or the other. And so as leaders, one of the wider perspectives that we can bring to these conversations is, what is the comparative advantage of a certain piece of technology? What are we going to try to augment? What is fundamentally a computation task? And on the other hand, what are fundamentally human tasks? Where is it that discretion or judgment is really required? And it's sorting out which is which. It's a very difficult task, but it is the most appropriate acknowledgement of tools can only help us so much. Humans will always be in the loop. And so what's the perspective on best use of a tool? And in that case, put the human where they need to be to drive greatest value. I love prognostic questions like that. I think it's a great way to have a conversation around trends. Very likely our predictions are going to be off somehow, but I think it's a really amazing time to be working in data and analytics, because there is such a fast evolving technical terrain, and it's opening certain kinds of capabilities that really we haven't seen, or we thought were largely science fiction, that are coming to bear and being practical tools that we can use in our enterprises. And so this proliferation of use cases, the proliferation of data and analytics users and data literate users, makes this a very exciting time. And I think that what we will see is a permeation of data and analytics across our enterprises, where it's going to become a core aspect of the way that we get a lot of work done. And I think that the number of different use cases that we have seen propagate over the last 5 years will only continue. And so what that will look like specifically, who knows? But I think it's a really exciting time for data and analytics.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.